12, so 12 islands. It's also part of the Southern Aegean volcanic arc, which includes the islands of Tilos, Kos, Aegeus, and goes up to Santorini. The island itself is approximately 42 square kilometres, and as you can see, it's mountainous, volcanic, and is also very fertile. It's also thought to be one of the greenest of the Greek islands. This is because of the composition of the earth. It contains a lot of pumice, so the earth retains humidity, and many of the plants can survive the long hot summers that we have here. At the moment, Kos is quite green. In August, it's brown. By comparison, Nisyros is still quite green. At the moment, just over 1,000 people live on the island, and they live in 4 villages. Mandraki, the port, which is also the capital of the island, about 800 people live there, and the 3 other villages are Pali, Emborius and Nikia. Now the island that you can see on the left hand side with the white front, we passed it on the boat. This island is called Yali. Yali, this comes from the Greek word for glass. In ancient times they would mine there for the black volcanic glass called obsidian. This was used then for surgical equipment and also for offensive weapons. But the main product of this island is pumice and perlite. I think the German word is brimstone.
That's pumice. Sorry, what is pumice? Pumice.
Do you know?
I see. I see. Okay, all right.
So,
okay. Yeah, I've got it. All right.
So I'm passing a sample of obsidian and the pumice round. So if you pass it back around the coach and it comes back to me. Now pumice and perlite, these are important ingredients in the mix for concrete. And Yali is the 3rd largest pumice mine in the world. Some years ago, the mayor made a special arrangement with a French concrete company called Lafarge. And Lafarge had the sole mining rights on this island. In return, the local council receive every year a percentage of the value of what they take from the island. Also, they employ 30 people from the island to work there. But because nobody is allowed to live on the island anymore, they must travel there and back every day on the boat. In summer this is nice. In winter sometimes not so good. Now the small round island you can see here, this is called Strongoli. Nobody lives here. This is actually another volcano, but it has gone cold and it's dead. And in between Yali and Nisyros, there is a vast underwater caldera. This goes 700 meters deep. Now down on the left hand side, this is the 2nd largest village. This is Pali. These days it's a fishing harbour and in the summer a marina for small boats. This area has been famous since ancient times because of the hot thermal spring that they have here, and this spring is supplied by a large underwater lake. Hippocrates would send people to the island to bathe in the water because it's said to be good for skin diseases like eczema, psoriasis, and also some bone diseases, such as arthritis or rheumatism. Now the big building you can see on the end with the red roof, this is called Pelides. In the late 1800s, a gentleman called Mr. Pelides decided to build a luxury hotel with thermal spa for the rich and famous of the day. Unfortunately, he died in 1920 before the building was finished. So, as is the way, his son inherited the hotel and the money. Local legend says that he was addicted to gambling, and by 1928, all work on the hotel had stopped. He'd run out of money, he'd lost it all. So the building has been empty for decades. They did do some restoration work on the outside walls, but now it has a new owner who hopes maybe to open the hotel in 2 or 3 years' time. Now the next populated island to Nisyros is called Telos, and if she's on the straight up direction, further up you might be able to see a glimpse of it. This island is actually larger than Nisyros, but is quite barren. Only 300 people live there. But this became famous in the 1960s because some archaeologists working there discovered the mummified remains of an animal called the miniature elephant. This was the first proof they'd had this animal had actually existed. After further work, they realised that the woolly mammoth, that the miniature elephant was actually a descendant of the woolly mammoth, which means at some point in time Telos was attached to the continent of Asia Minor. This is where the woolly mammoth originally lived. And now the island has always had two big problems with water. The first one being that where the island is so mountainous, when the winter rains came, it would wash the earth away down into the sea. So they started building the terraces you can see on the left hand side for agricultural purposes. As the population of the island grew, and at one time 12,000 people lived on the island, they needed to grow more and more food, so they built more and more of these terraces till virtually the entire island is covered in them. Some of these go back 600 years. Unfortunately now, with a much smaller population, they no longer have the manpower to maintain them, and many are starting to fall down. If you look straight ahead up the hill, this is the third village, this is Emborius. Now the people that built this village originally came from Pali. These people were great traders in their day, and they were very rich. But living on the seaside, they had big problems with pirates. So eventually, about half the people decided to leave the sea and started a new village high up in the hill, which was easier to fortify and defend both their money and their people. At one time, 3,000 people lived here. Nowadays, about 20. But they have an unusual natural feature. Where they built the village was actually over a vent from the crater, so they have a natural sauna. The village is 500 metres above sea level, and the temperatures can reach 600 degrees Celsius. Did you see those boxes, wooden boxes on the left hand side? These are beehives. Normally they harvest the honey in August, and the honey from the island is naturally flavoured with thyme. Now the second problem they had with water is the shortage of it. Kos is self-sufficient in water, Nisyros is not. The water they do have is contaminated by sulphur and other minerals from the crater and is almost undrinkable. They used to have to collect and store the winter rainwater. When we go through the village later, you'll see many of the houses have basements. This is where they would collect it. When big tankers came along that could carry large volumes of liquid, they started to ship water to the island from Athens and from Rhodes. Then about 25 years ago, they built a desalination plant. So they take the seawater, obviously remove the salt, clean it, and this is now pumped into people's houses. The only problem is this is expensive and doesn't taste so good. So many people still use bottled water for cooking and obviously for drinking the water. Now, as you can see, the island has got very many trees. 3 of these are very important to the islanders. This is the olive tree, fig trees, and they also have almond. Now from the almonds, they make a special drink. This is a speciality of Nisyros, and it is called sumada. Now it tastes of almonds, it's sweet, and to drink it, first you must mix it with water. It's like amaretto, but without the alcohol. And if you want to try it, all the bars and restaurants sell it, so it's easy to try. And if you want to buy some to take home with you, you can find it in the local shops. You will also see, apart from the honey, another drink they produce on the island. This one is made from cinnamon, and this is called canelada. It's the same as the sumada. You have to mix it with water. Now at one time, there was another village on the island. This island was called Avlaki, and it was on the other side of the crater and halfway down the hill. They also had problems with pirates, and then they had an even bigger problem with earthquakes, and the village was virtually destroyed. So they decided to move up the hill, and they built a new village right on the very edge of the crater, and they called it Nisyros. And at the moment there's about 15 people living there. So, now we begin our descent into the crater of the volcano. It is the second largest crater in the world, second only to the one in Hawaii. It's 2.5 kilometers long and about 1 kilometer at its widest point. Now if you look straight ahead up the hill, you can see some few houses. This is Nisyros. Now within the main crater there are 4 smaller craters, the largest of which is on the right hand side back. This is Stefanos. This is the largest and the safest, and this is the one you can walk down into today. So now we come to how was Nisyros formed? According to Greek mythology, the gods and the giants were at war, and one day the god Poseidon saw the giant Polyvotis running across the world. So Poseidon chased after him. Whilst they were running, Poseidon saw Cos, and he stopped. He cut a big piece off, He speared it with his trident and he threw it at the giant. And Polyvotis fell back into the sea with what they now call Nisyros on top of him to be trapped for eternity. This is why the island still shakes sometimes. The giant is trying to break free. Well, we know that one's not true anymore. Nisyros, geologically speaking, is a comparatively young island. It's approximately 160,000 years old and was formed by lava activity underneath the sea. Where the African and the continental plates meet under the sea, there is a fault, and the sides rubbed up and down against each other. Eventually, one side lifted up over the other, and lava magma was released into the sea. This formed a layer that went cold and hard very quickly. Over time, the pressure underneath built up again and more magma was released into the sea. And this formed a second layer, which they call pillow lava. This happened many thousands of times over many thousands of years, and slowly, the layers built up until land was formed. When Nisyros first emerged, it was twice the height that it is now, and it was dome-shaped. 25,000 years ago, there was an eruption and the dome collapsed in on itself. Then 15,000 years ago, there was a massive eruption and it tore the heart of the island out. They have calculated that 16 billion tons of Nisyros was moved during this time, and it left the crater much as you see it today. So as you can see, it's very fertile actually in the crater. This is because of the high percentage of volcanic ash in the earth. In fact, you will see some cows here. Some of the local farmers bring their cows and their pigs down to feed. The age of 12 are free. Now you are on bus number A1. You will return on the same bus, and the bus will be leaving at 12:10. Now, very quickly, health and safety.